It was supposed to be just another birthday party, balloons, cake, too many cameras. My son had been invited by the rich kids whose mom I worked for, and he couldn't stop smiling the whole way there. I just stood back, proud, watching him fit in for once. But then it started to rain. I heard a splash, a scream, and before I knew it, one of those kids was under the water. The next few seconds changed everything. The morning air smelled of cut grass and sun-warmed soil, the kind of smell that sticks to your clothes and never quite leaves. I'd been trimming lawns in the Hillside Estates neighborhood for almost 6 years now, long enough for the residents to wave without remembering my name. To them, I was just the gardener. But to my 8-year-old son, Sam, I was everything: a dad, a teacher, a partner in survival. He always came with me on Saturdays. While I pushed the mower, he followed with the leaf blower, humming off-key to the radio playing from our old pickup truck. Sometimes he'd stop to pick up worms from the grass, holding them up like discoveries. They help the ground breathe, he'd say proudly, repeating what I once told him. I'd just nod and smile. That was my boy, curious about everything, never ashamed of our simple life. Across the hedge stood the Grant Mansion, 3 stories of white columns, manicured roses, and cars worth more than my yearly income. I trimmed their lawns twice a week. The woman who lived there, Olivia Grant, owned a line of luxury interior design stores. She rarely came outside. When she did, she moved like someone who didn't know what silence sounded like. Her 5 kids, quintuplets, all about Sam's age, often watched us from the balcony. They'd whisper and giggle when Sam helped me, like he was some rare animal they'd never seen before. I told him to ignore it. But one day, one of them, a girl with 2 long braids, waved. Then another waved back. And then all 5 were at the railing, shouting hi, down to him. Sam looked at me. "Can I wave back, Dad?" I shrugged, pretending not to care. "Sure, buddy. Wave back." He did, and their laughter filled the air like the sound of something new being born. That was the first day I saw curiosity in those kids' faces instead of distance. It didn't mean much at the time, just kids being kids. But sometimes, life starts shifting in the smallest moments. A wave across a hedge, a child's laughter that breaks through the wall between rich and poor. I didn't know it yet, but that sound would echo all the way to their marble driveway, where everything was about to change. By late June, the sun in Hillside Estates had that golden sting, the kind that makes sweat look like salt crystals on your arms. I'd been mowing Olivia Grant's backyard for 3 hours, the engine humming like an old friend. Sam sat near the flower bed with his juice box, sketching something in his little notepad. That kid never stopped drawing: trees, houses, cars, sometimes even me with a lawnmower. "Dad," he said, squinting at the house, "do you think rich people ever get bored?" I laughed. "Bored? Probably not. They just find fancier ways to stay busy." He grinned, that crooked smile that always reminded me of his mom, soft around the edges but full of stubbornness. He went back to sketching, tongue between his teeth, lost in his world. Then I heard giggles from the balcony again, 5 identical faces peeking through the railing. The Grant kids. They were dressed in white and pastel colors, like walking Easter decorations. One of the boys pointed at Sam. "He's drawing." Another chimed in. "What's he drawing?" I turned off the mower, gave them a polite nod, and wiped my forehead. "He just likes to draw whatever he sees." "Can we see?" asked one of the girls. Her voice was curious, not mocking. Sam froze, unsure what to do. He looked at me for permission. I nodded, and he shyly held up his notepad. From up there, they couldn't see much, so they started shouting ideas. "Is that our house? Make the fountain bigger. Add the dog." Olivia's voice suddenly cut through the air. "Children." Inside, the laughter stopped immediately. The kids disappeared like shadows retreating from light. Sam's smile faded too. He lowered his drawing. I wanted to tell him not to take it personally, but how could I? He was 8, and rejection cuts sharper at that age. When we finished, I packed up the tools, and as we were about to leave, the mansion doors opened again. Olivia Grant herself stepped out, tall, poised, sunglasses hiding her eyes. She looked at me, then at Sam. "Your son," she said, her tone cautious. "He's quite talented." I didn't know how to respond. Praise from people like her usually came with a warning label. "Thank you, ma'am," I said finally. "He just likes to draw." She hesitated, almost smiled, then turned to go back inside. But before the door closed, she added. The children, they liked him. Sam's eyes widened. Did she mean it, Dad? I started the truck, keeping my voice even. Doesn't matter if she did or not, buddy. You just keep being you. As we drove off, I caught a glimpse of the balcony in the mirror. 5 little faces pressed against the glass, watching us leave. For the first time, they didn't look amused. They looked curious. And maybe, just maybe, a little envious. It happened a week later, on a Thursday morning, so bright it almost hurt to look at the grass. I'd just started trimming the hedge near the Grant family's driveway when I heard voices. High, cheerful, and far too close. I looked up and saw them. The 5 Grant kids, dressed in matching summer clothes, running across the yard toward us. Sam dropped the rake and froze. Dad, they're coming. Relax, I said, half smiling. They probably just want to ask you about that drawing again. But they didn't. They surrounded him like a tiny council of chaos. 5 versions of the same polite curiosity. The girl with braids, who seemed to be their unofficial leader, stepped forward. Hey, Sam. We're having a birthday party on Sunday. For all of us. You should come. Sam blinked. All of you? Like 5 birthdays at once. Yep, said one of the boys proudly. We're quintuplets. I stopped trimming, resting my hand on the handle. I wanted to intervene, to stop whatever awkwardness might come next, but the look on Sam's face stopped me. He was glowing, like someone had just handed him a key to another world. Before I could say anything, the mansion doors opened. Olivia Grant stepped out in a beige dress and sunglasses, phone in hand, her voice sharp from a recent call. Children, don't wander off like that. She stopped mid-sentence when she saw Sam and me standing there. The air went still for a second. Then her daughter turned and said, Mom, can Sam come to our party? Olivia's mouth opened slightly. Her gaze went from her children to Sam, who was clutching his sketchbook against his chest like armor, and then to me. Her voice softened just a little. You're a friend from the garden? 5 heads nodded eagerly. I expected her to laugh, or make an excuse, or pretend to be polite before saying no. But instead, she tilted her head, looked at Sam again, and said, You know what? Sure. He can come. Her kids cheered. Sam's eyes went wide. Really? I cleared my throat. Ma'am, that's very kind of you, but I don't think. She waved a hand. Nonsense. Children should spend time with good influences. Good influences. I wasn't sure if she meant Sam or herself, but her tone wasn't mocking, more like she was testing her own words. That night, Sam couldn't stop talking about it. He cleaned his sneakers twice, picked out his shirt 3 days early, and kept asking if it was okay to bring a gift. What can we give rich kids, Dad? They have everything. I smiled. Then give them something they don't, something you made yourself. He thought for a moment and said, A drawing? Yeah, I said, looking at him with pride. A drawing would be perfect. And deep down, I hoped he'd give them more than that, something no money could buy, a piece of who he was. Sunday came dressed like summer itself, clear skies, trimmed lawns, and a breeze that smelled faintly of gardenias. Sam had been up since dawn, pacing our small living room in his cleanest jeans and a white shirt that was slightly too big. He must have asked me a dozen times if he looked okay. You look great, buddy. I told him for the 13th time. They're lucky to have you there. He smiled, clutching the brown paper envelope with his drawing inside. I just hope they like it. I parked the truck 2 streets away. Didn't want to roll up to a Millionaire's driveway in a dented pickup that coughed every time it stopped. We walked the rest of the way, past rows of imported cars and uniformed valets. The Grant mansion looked like something out of a movie. Colorful balloons tied to white columns, a massive fountain running pink lemonade instead of water, and a catering team dressed better than most office workers. Everywhere I looked, there were kids laughing, running, jumping on rented inflatables, while their parents stood around with champagne glasses, pretending to care. Olivia was near the patio, talking to someone in a suit. When she noticed us, her face flickered between surprise and polite control. You made it, she said, lowering her sunglasses slightly. Sam, the kids are in the back garden. Sam thanked her, and ran off clutching his envelope. I stood off to the side, hands in my pockets, watching from a distance like some unwanted extra in a play I didn't belong to. Olivia's guests gave me the occasional glance, the kind rich people think looks subtle but isn't. One man whispered something that made his wife laugh quietly behind her glass. Sam joined the 5 kids by the bounce house. He handed them the envelope, and they opened it together, his drawing of all 5 of them, with their dog, standing in front of their home. It wasn't perfect, but it was alive, warm, detailed, full of feeling. For a few seconds, they were speechless. Then one of the boys grinned. "That's us," he shouted. "This is awesome." They pulled him into a group hug, laughing, showing the drawing to their mother. And for the first time that day, Olivia smiled, genuinely smiled, as if something softened inside her. But not everyone shared that reaction. I overheard a woman near the buffet table whisper to another, "Isn't that the gardener's kid? That's sweet, I guess." The other replied, "Sweet? Yes, but awkward, don't you think?" I felt the words like tiny stones hitting glass. Still, I stayed quiet. This was Sam's day, not mine. When he looked my way, I smiled and gave him a small thumbs up. He smiled back, wide, proud, beaming like the sun itself. And for a brief, perfect moment, I forgot who was rich and who wasn't. At first, everything looked like it might actually stay good. The kids were laughing, chasing bubbles across the lawn. Sam was part of the group now, not the outsider. I stood by the hedge, quietly trimming a few stray branches, mostly to keep from looking out of place. But the shift came slowly, like a cloud rolling over the sun. I heard it before I saw it. Soft voices, practiced tones. "Olivia really should be more careful who she lets in," said one woman in a coral dress, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "It's sweet, of course, but still, optics matter." Her friend nodded, pretending to sip her champagne. "Exactly. One day it's the gardener's kid, next it's the pool boy. You have to set boundaries." The words slid through the air, sharp but polished. I kept my eyes down, pretending not to hear, pretending not to care. But I could see Olivia standing by the fountain, overhearing the same whispers. Her smile was frozen, polite, perfect, professional. Then one of the fathers, clearly feeling bold, clapped me on the shoulder as he passed. "Good work on the hedges, man. You run a tight ship." I gave him a nod. "Thanks. Just trying to keep things neat." He grinned. Always a good attitude to have. Then he walked away like he'd done me a favor. I saw Sam across the yard, still playing with the quintuplets. They were building some kind of castle out of plastic blocks near the pool. For a while, everything seemed fine. Then one of the other boys, a guest, not part of the family, made a face and said, "My mom says your dad works here." Sam froze. The Grant kids looked at him, confused. "So what?" said one of them. The boy shrugged. "Just saying. My dad says he's just the lawn guy." Sam didn't answer. He just looked down, his little hands tightening around a toy car. Olivia was close enough to hear. Her eyes flicked between the kids and me, and for a second, I thought she might say something. Defend him. But she didn't. She just turned and walked toward her guests. I saw Sam's shoulders drop. The laughter around him dimmed, replaced by a silence too heavy for children. I set down my trimmer, took a slow breath, and walked over. "Hey, buddy. You doing okay?" He looked up, his eyes glassy but brave. "Yeah, Dad. Can we go soon?" I glanced toward Olivia, who was now laughing again with her friends, her voice too bright to be real. "Yeah," I said quietly. "We'll finish up soon." As I packed the tools, I heard the first drops of rain tapping against the marble patio. Soft, steady, and strangely fitting. Sometimes, storms don't start in the sky, they start in people. The drizzle turned to rain in seconds, that kind of heavy summer rain that soaks you before you can even think to run. Guests started scrambling toward the patio, grabbing purses, napkins, phones. A caterer rushed to cover the buffet, while a DJ cursed under his breath, trying to save his equipment from shorting out. "Guess that's our cue," I muttered, slinging the trimmer over my shoulder. Sam nodded, his small hand slipping into mine as we headed toward the truck. But halfway there, I heard it, a shriek. Not the kind of playful scream kids make, but something sharper. "Mom!" He fell. I turned just in time to see chaos break loose near the pool. One of the Grant boys, the smallest, had slipped on the wet tile and gone straight into the water. The other kids stood frozen, screaming his name. Without thinking, I dropped the tool, kicked off my boots, and ran. Olivia was already kneeling by the pool's edge, her hands shaking, her voice cracking as she called for help. No one moved. The men in suits just stood there, paralyzed by shock or fear of ruining their clothes. So I jumped. The water was cold and cloudy from the rain, stinging my eyes as I went under. I saw the boy sinking, arms limp, bubbles escaping his mouth. My chest burned, but I pushed harder, grabbed him, and kicked upward with everything I had. When we broke the surface, Olivia gasped, covering her mouth. I laid the boy on the edge of the pool and started CPR, counting breaths, pressing rhythmically, praying under my breath. Come on, kid, come on. Then, a cough. A weak one, but enough to make everyone exhale at once. He spit out water and started crying, his tiny hands clutching his mother's dress. Olivia pulled him close, tears mixing with the rain. For a moment, nobody said a word, just the sound of the storm and the boy's breathing. I sat back, drenched, catching my breath. My shirt clung to me, my hands shaking from adrenaline. Sam stood nearby, eyes wide, trembling but proud. Olivia finally looked up. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her face, the perfect face that never cracked, was breaking right in front of me. Thank you, she whispered. Her voice was small, raw. I don't know what. I shook my head. You don't have to. Then I stood, grabbed my boots, and helped Sam into his jacket. Let's go home, buddy. As we walked toward the truck, thunder rolled somewhere far off, deep and tired. The kind that sounds less like anger and more like relief. Sometimes dignity isn't loud. Sometimes it's just doing the right thing and walking away before anyone decides to make it about them. By the time the rain stopped, the sky was heavy and gray, the kind of stillness that follows chaos, when everyone's too shaken to speak above a whisper. I was sitting in the truck, wringing out my sleeves, when Olivia came running toward us. She wasn't the composed woman from earlier, not the CEO in heels and diamonds. Her hair clung to her face, her eyes red, and her voice trembling. Please wait, she said, breathless. I rolled the window down halfway. Sam sat beside me, silent, still gripping my arm like he was afraid I'd disappear. She placed her hand on the door. He's okay. The doctor checked him. You saved my son's life. I nodded once. I'm glad he's all right. For a second, she just stood there in the rain-soaked driveway, trying to find the right words. The woman who probably never stumbled in a boardroom suddenly couldn't form a sentence. I heard what people said earlier. About you. About your son. I should have said something. You didn't have to, I replied quietly. You heard enough today to understand how people see us. That's not your fault. She flinched. Maybe not. But it's my world. And I didn't stop it. Sam looked up at her, his voice small but honest. You don't have to be scared to do the right thing. The words hit harder than he knew. Olivia's eyes softened, her lip trembling. Your son's wise, she said finally. I started the engine. He gets it from his mom, I said, though that wasn't entirely true. As I began to pull away, she called out again, Mr. Cole. I paused. Please, she said, stepping closer. Let me do something, anything. A contract, a donation, a recommendation. It's the least I can do. I looked at her through the rain-specked window. I didn't do it for something in return, Mrs. Grant. I just did what anyone should have done. Her eyes searched mine, desperate to make amends. But there's a certain kind of apology that doesn't need to be spoken, only lived. Take care of your kids, I said. That'll be enough. She nodded slowly, defeated but sincere. Then she watched as our old Ford truck rattled down her perfect driveway, the sound of gravel under tires breaking the mansion's silence. Sam leaned against me, exhausted. Dad, are you okay? Yeah, I said, staring at the road ahead. Just tired. But it wasn't just tired. It was something deeper. The ache of being seen and unseen at the same time. Still, when I looked at Sam, I knew something good had come out of it. He'd seen what real courage looked like, not in the rescue, but in walking away with your dignity intact. And maybe, just maybe, so had she. The next morning, sunlight crept through the tall windows of Olivia Grant's mansion, landing on toys still scattered across the marble floor. The birthday decorations hung half-deflated, silent witnesses to a storm that had done more than just drench the grass. Olivia sat alone at the kitchen table, still in her robe, her coffee untouched. Her son, the one who had fallen, was fine, sleeping upstairs. She'd spent most of the night replaying it all in her mind. The splash, the screams, the silence before Ethan jumped in. Her reflection in the window looked like a stranger, hair unbrushed, eyes tired, skin pale. The perfection she wore like armor every day had cracked, and beneath it, she saw herself. Human, vulnerable, smaller than she'd ever felt. The doorbell rang. For a second, her stomach twisted. Part of her almost hoped it was him. But when she opened the door, It was just a delivery driver, dropping off something ordinary. A package, a folded newspaper, life going on. She signed and stood on the porch. The garden looked different now. The same hedge Ethan had trimmed with quiet precision looked alive, not decorative, like part of the world again, not just the property. Inside, her kids were already awake, whispering about the hero gardener. They wanted to make him a card, a big one with bright letters and a drawing of their brother smiling. Olivia hesitated. "He's probably busy," she said automatically. But even as she said it, she hated herself for it. Her daughter, the one with the braids, looked up. "You always say busy isn't an excuse." Olivia froze. "When did I say that?" "Last week," the girl said simply. "When we missed your dinner." And just like that, the truth hit her harder than the storm ever could. She'd built a life full of things that looked perfect, but meant nothing. The man who saved her child didn't own much, yet somehow he carried more grace, strength, and peace than all her wealth could buy. That afternoon, she got into her car and drove through the streets until she saw a familiar old Ford truck parked outside a small, worn-down house. A kid's bicycle leaned against the porch, and from inside, she could hear laughter. She didn't get out. She just sat there, hands on the wheel, watching. The sound of their laughter carried through the open window. A father and son, talking like friends, unguarded, real. For the first time in years, she didn't feel envy. She felt admiration, and a little shame. She turned off the engine, whispered to herself, "Money builds walls. Kindness tears them down." Then she drove home, knowing her life, her perspective, would never be quite the same again. A week later, the sun was back to being merciless, baking the sidewalks and glinting off the Grant Mansion's windows like nothing had ever happened. But something had changed, maybe not in the house, maybe not in the manicured lawns, but in the people who lived there. I was out front, trimming hedges for another client when I saw her car. A black Mercedes eased up to the curb, quiet and deliberate. Olivia Grant stepped out, wearing something simple this time. Jeans, a light blouse, no jewelry that screamed importance. For the first time, she looked like a person, not a headline. She crossed the street slowly, heels clicking against the pavement, carrying a white envelope in her hand. I turned off the trimmer and wiped my hands on my jeans. "Mrs. Grant," I said, neutral but polite. "Ethan," she replied softly. "Do you have a minute?" Sam was nearby, stacking twigs into a pile. He looked up, then back down, quietly protective, like he wasn't sure if she'd come to apologize or to take something away. Olivia glanced at him and smiled gently before turning back to me. "I wanted to thank you properly," she said. "Not just for saving my son, but for everything else I didn't see before." She held out the envelope. "It's not charity. It's a contract. I'd like to offer you a permanent position managing our estate's landscaping division. Benefits, full pay, and creative control. You deserve more than this." I looked at the envelope but didn't take it. "That's generous," I said carefully. "But I think I'm where I need to be." Her eyebrows lifted, unsure if she'd heard right. "You're turning it down?" I nodded. "I didn't do what I did because I wanted something back. And as for respect, well, that can't come with a paycheck. It comes from how you treat people." For a moment, she didn't speak. Then, quietly, "You're right." She folded the envelope and tucked it into her purse. "You know, my kids talk about your son every day. They said he's their hero." I smiled faintly. "He's mine too." She looked at Sam again, her eyes softening. "You've raised him well. Maybe someday, I'll learn to do the same." Before she left, she extended her hand. I shook it, firm but brief. There was something unspoken in the gesture. Not pity, not guilt, just mutual understanding. As she got back into her car, Sam looked up. "Dad, why didn't you take it?" "It sounded nice." "It did," I said, starting the trimmer again. "But sometimes, walking away is how you keep your peace." He nodded slowly, thinking about it the way only kids do, quietly, deeply, like he was storing the lesson for later. And as I watched the car disappear down the road, I realized something. Respect doesn't always come in applause or money. Sometimes, it's in silence, when someone finally sees you for who you are and lets that truth change them. 2 weeks later, the Grants' mansion looked different, not because the walls had changed, but because something inside them had. The voices that once echoed with rehearsed politeness now carried laughter that sounded real. Sam and I were back at work, mowing the side lawn while the kids played near the fountain. This time, there were no curious stares or whispers, just shouts of "Hi, Mr. Cole," and "Hey, Sam," echoing over the hedges. Olivia came outside carrying a large cardboard tube. "Sam," she called, "the kids made something for you." He looked at me, nervous. "Go on, buddy," I said, nodding. He ran over, and the quintuplets surrounded him, all grinning as they unrolled a giant piece of poster paper. Bright crayons filled the page, 5 stick figures holding hands with a smaller one in the middle. Beside them stood a tall man with a rake, drawn in blue and green. Above them, in uneven letters, were the words, "Our hero, the gardener who saved us." Olivia watched from behind them, tears in her eyes, but smiling. "They wanted to show you how much you mean to them," she said softly. Sam held the drawing with both hands, speechless. I could see the pride in his face, the quiet kind that doesn't need words. Olivia looked at me, and for once, there was no barrier between us. Just two parents standing in the same truth, that what we teach our children matters more than what we own. "Mr. Cole," she said, "I've learned more from you and your son in the past 2 weeks than I have from anyone in my entire circle." I smiled, wiping the sweat from my neck. "Then I guess that makes us even. Because you reminded me that kindness doesn't need an audience to count." Sam tugged on my sleeve, holding up the drawing. "Can we hang it at home?" "Yeah," I said, front and center. As we packed up our tools, the kids waved until our truck disappeared around the corner. The wind picked up, rustling through the grass we'd just cut, carrying the sound of their laughter behind us, soft, pure, alive. That night, the drawing went up on our living room wall. It wasn't perfect, the crayon lines were crooked, and the colors bled together, but it was honest. Every time I looked at it, I was reminded of one thing. True worth isn't measured by what you have, it's in how you show up when no one expects you to.